My name is Jessica Cloud. I am a fundraising consultant and a certified fundraising executive, and my business is called Real Deal Fundraising. So if you're on my account, if you have benefited from any of the educational materials that I have put out, or you've resonated with the ways in which I've poked fun about working at nonprofits, please consider giving me a follow. And every Friday at 12:30 Eastern, I hop on here on live basically for a free half hour of consulting. So if you are out there in the ether and you have a question about fundraising, you can always drop it into a comment on any of my videos, send me a DM, or come to the live and put the question into the chat and I will happily answer that. So if you have questions about anything to do with nonprofit work, fundraising in particular, whether you're a board member, an executive director, or a member of the fundraising staff, we are here to help anyone who wants to raise funds for a good cause without burning themselves out. So today, I always like to come prepared with something to talk about, and today we are going to go through major gifts. So I have a model for how to diversify your individual giving, and that acronym is THRIVE. And the T in THRIVE stands for transformational gifts, which basically means major gifts of the size and volume that will really move the needle for your organization and their ability to deliver the services well and meet the need of the cause that your nonprofit was created to help with. So basically, I want to start by saying something that surprises a lot of folks. And we here in fundraising, this might not be so surprising for you, but if you are a layperson, you've just joined a board, you've just agreed to volunteer for a nonprofit, you may not know this. What do you think the easiest way to raise $1,000 quickly is? So we're thinking like how you used to sell chocolates and wrapping paper in elementary school, right? That's what we are brought up to think of as fundraising. I would argue that's not fundraising at all, because fundraising in the philanthropic sense is deeply grounded in relationship, and transaction is not the same thing as relationship. So the easiest way to raise $1,000, the easiest and quickest way, is to ask one person for that $1,000 gift. And a lot of people will be like, what are you talking about? No, of course it can't just be any person. You need to be able to figure out who that right person would be, because first of all, they have to have what I call affinity, meaning they have some sort of personal connection to or interest in the mission of your nonprofit organization. Secondarily, they have to be philanthropic. They have to be a generous person. So A is affinity, P is propensity to give, and C is capacity. Do they have the financial capacity to make a gift of the size that you're talking about? In this case, we're talking about a hypothetical $1,000 gift. And the only way you would know those three things is if you had been in relationship with that person. So perhaps this person begins volunteering for your organization and gives $50. And then the next year they give another $50. And then suddenly they jump up to $100. And then maybe they've jumped up to $250. So they're increasing their financial commitment as they're learning more about your organization over time. That is a person that you should be taking for coffee, talking to on the phone every month or every other month. You should be making sure that they're coming to tour your facility if you have something at that facility to see. You should be giving them updates, sending them meaningful emails about what their last gift accomplished. This is how you build a relationship, so that when you're in a pinch and you need $1,000 quick and easy and fast without burning your staff out, that's the person that you call. And I will almost guarantee that in 80 to 90% of cases, if you have taken the time to build a relationship and built it around the mission, around care for them as a unique individual and an understanding of how they connect to your mission, Almost never will that person tell you no. Basically, though, it's so much more joyful to be in real, deep, true relationship with folks and to have a deep understanding of why and how they want to support your nonprofit's mission than it is to just be on this constant treadmill of 5Ks, donut sales, car washes, where you have to organize a bunch of people. And that is great that builds a team camaraderie, right? That everyone bands together to put on the event. I have been part of teams where we have felt that way, and it does deeply bond you as a staff. But that's not the purpose of those events. Sometimes you can have an event that will bring in new donors. And those donors, but you want to make sure you're not bringing those donors in because they were interested in a car wash and felt like, okay, the car wash is the primary thing I'm engaging with. It's nice that it supports a good cause. Versus I attended a luncheon where I heard all about the work of this organization and the transformative way that they impact people's lives. And I was so moved by that program at that event that I made a gift, that I made an investment. This second one is the beginning of a real relationship, of something that can be transformative for the donor and the organization. The first one is a car wash with a nice side effect, right? And if your goal is to build team camaraderie, by all means, proceed with these other sorts of events. If your goal, though, is to keep your staff for longer and to make sure that your staff have the energy to pursue more funding for your mission, if your goal is to raise money in a way that will result in long-term relationships that feed your mission sustainably for decades, you're going to want to do a different type of event to acquire your donors. So basically, if we want to have transformational gifts, we need to bring people in through the right avenues, through avenues that are meaningful and transformational for those folks, and not avenues that lean towards mere participation, like a golf tournament or a transactional type of, I bought an item and that item is funding the cause or mission. So once you have donors to take a look at, how do you know which ones would be good ones to begin engaging with on a one-on-one basis and bring more deeply into your mission? There are some inklings that you can get from your database. Now, the good news is that your database probably already contains your next major donors. They're already in there, most likely. So your major donors are probably already giving to you. You just need to look for the signals that are going to tell you whether they might be ready to move into what you might call a major donor category. Now, it's not necessarily the same major donor level at every organization. An organization that is a newer nonprofit that's just getting started and building their donor base, $1,000 may very well be a major gift for them, a transformational gift, and that's okay. Now, large major public universities and private institutions and national nonprofits that have been around a long time, a major gift is going to be much higher threshold. It might be $5,000, $25,000, even $100,000 at some places. And so you have to decide that for your nonprofit. What is going to be the threshold of what a donor might be able to give on an annual basis that would mean that I'm going to invest one-on-one time in that relationship and building that relationship. So that's something you have to decide at the institution level, the organization level for your nonprofit. So first of all, someone that might give you gifts is not Mackenzie Scott. It's not Oprah. It's not a magical person out in the field that you hear about making a lot of philanthropic gifts. And I know this is very common, and oftentimes a lot of board members will come forward for this, and they will honestly waste a lot of staff time saying, okay, can we write a letter to Oprah? Can we write a letter to Mackenzie Scott? No, you're not on their list, right? And it's very difficult to get on their list. So those are pipe dreams. So we're swinging wildly from, hey, I'm going to sell car washes to, oh, I'm going to just cold call Mackenzie Scott. The person that you're looking for again, is already in your database. That person has likely given to you before, so look for that. They should know and share some values with your organization. So a lot of times you can find this out because they have engaged at previous events. They may have been a volunteer at one point. They might know someone on your board, and that board member can verify, yes, they really care about this issue that your nonprofit is working on. And then you need to have some inkling around capacity. And oftentimes you can't get a feel for someone's financial capacity until you're in the room with them on what is known as a discovery call. So the first time you're really meeting with them one-on-one, you'll get a lot of ding, yes, this person has the capacity to support the organization at a higher level. Now, what might that look like? Okay. I met a donor at her selection. We had breakfast at a French bakery in Chelsea in New York City. Okay, that was a pretty swanky little place. I liked it. They said during the conversation they had a brownstone around the corner. Okay, that's some expensive real estate. They worked in finance. They had taken several international trips lately. And they also talked about board service on another organization that sort of overlapped like a Venn diagram. And actually, that is usually a great thing. A lot of nonprofits get scared off. They're like, I can't approach that person because they support this organization over here that's a lot like ours. That's actually a good thing because that tells you, again, their propensity to give. Are they a generous person? If they're serving on the board of another organization that is at all similar to yours in value, that is a good sign. Yes, that person can support more than one organization, and you do want to be on their list and on their radar. And in fact, if they're in your universe at all, they're probably wondering why you're not asking them. So I would say those kinds of things. You can get inklings about how they support different organizations. Do they have financial capacity? Do they feel, are there signals that they have some wealth and income that they could share with your nonprofit and give towards your cause? Another thing you can look for in the database is, have they participated in any what I call hand-raising activities? So a donor that's given 50, 50, 50, 50, then 100, then they jump up to 500. Okay, this is what I call hand-raising activity. They are increasing their commitment without you even particularly asking directly. So that's a person that you want to take for coffee, right? You want to get to know that person better. You want to get on the phone with that person and tell them what you're doing at your organization with your mission, what impact you're having, what's your vision for the future. So where are you now? Where are you going? And then what is needed to get there? So what is the gap between where you are now and where you're going? Almost always it's resources, it's support, it's financial support. If you kind of lay out your updates for those donors in what I call connection calls, just start by meeting people and again, walking them through where you are now, what's coming next, and what's needed to get to that next. This is going to implicitly invite them back in. And then as you grow in that relationship, then you can get down to a more formal ask, like face-to-face ask of that person. But yeah, you're not guessing. You want someone who's given to you before, who maybe has increased their commitment, what I call hand-raising activity. You want to know that they have some shared values. They've given to similar organizations. They've engaged with you before. Maybe they know someone on your board. Maybe they know someone on your staff. And they are showing signs in their lifestyle markers and so forth. And perhaps you know them from the community that they support other organizations at a high level. So you know that they have some capacity to really give to you. So that's where I would start in terms of identification, which is like the first step in the donor cycle. So you have to identify them. And then we have to make sure that our hypothesis about this person is correct, that they do have an affinity with your cause and that they have the capacity and willingness to support you. So you're actually wanting to qualify, validate what you thought was true when you identified this potential major donor. And so I really want to talk about timeline from here. So from the moment you pluck a person out from your general base of donors and you say, I think this person might be able to support us at the major gift level, At that point, it can often take 18 to 24 months to cultivate that person to a major gift level. The lower your major gift level threshold is, the less time that will take. So if you're moving someone from maybe making a $5,000 a year commitment to $100K, that's going to take the full 18 to 24 months probably. Conversation, relationship building, deepening engagement, and getting to know each other better. And if you are really just trying to move someone from 500 to 1,000, that process can go a little bit more quickly. That might be 3 to 6 months, right? So that timeline, though, often doesn't line up with the tenure of the folks doing fundraising on your staff. So retention of good fundraising staff, whether that's an executive director that has some other duties or full-time fundraisers, is paramount in major gift work. It's so important that I believe that in addition to asking what your board participation rate in giving is, I think foundations should ask what your fundraising staff turnover rate is as well. Because that number, how long has your fundraiser been on staff, when was the last time that position turned over, gives the foundation a sense of how serious you are about your fundraising program, and how healthy that work environment is, and how healthy the expectations are that the board is setting upon the staff. Because when a foundation makes a gift to an organization, they want to know that organization has a full complement of diversified fundraising to support it, that the organization will not become completely dependent upon that grant funding in the future. And so that's why, anyway, but hot take, I absolutely think that foundations should ask for your staff fundraising turnover rate. It could be very revealing if folks started looking at that metric, I believe. So again, the average time from someone's very first gift, at least in higher education, which is the area of fundraising that I come out of, that timeline from very first gift, like maybe their first $25 gift, to their first major gift, let's say that's $5,000, can be on average 11 years. It can be as few as 3 is what I've seen in the data, and it can be as long as 40, right? But 11 is the average. So you're talking about 11 years where they're not being actively cultivated one-on-one. They're just making annual gifts. So I love to bring up this statistic when folks think that annual giving, it doesn't matter in this day and age. In the age of 90% of the dollars come from 10% of your prospects, does the annual giving even matter anymore? 100%. They're getting those folks into your database, and they are quietly and diligently cultivating them year after year before they're even on the radar of the major gift staff or the principal gift staff. So if that 11 years, you need to have those structures in place in your donor relations and your annual giving operation to keep those donors in, keep them engaged, keep them giving, keep them happy and informed about your mission. Because when you're ready to go in there for those major gifts, if you don't have that previous 3 to 11 years worth of investment, then it's going to be very difficult for you to create that relationship from scratch. So try to keep your fundraisers longer. I think the average turnover for fundraisers is something a little more than a year, but it takes 18 months minimum usually to move to a major gift. That's a huge mismatch there. We need our fundraisers that are having the direct relationships with the donors to stay longer. And that doesn't mean we pressure them into staying longer. It's about making the goals achievable, making the expectations reasonable, and moving away from what I call microwave fundraising methods that are quick, get you quick cash, but they burn people out. Those kinds of things are microwave fundraising. We move away from that if we want to keep our best fundraisers. And we want to move toward a situation where we're having more crock pot fundraising, where we are building those relationships slowly but diligently to increase people's commitment and knowledge of and investment in our organization. So remember, that your board absolutely should be involved in this process. If I could have board members do only two things to assist with fundraising, the first would be to make thank you calls, at least to every first-time donor. At least to every first-time donor that enters your organization. This is the very first gift that they've made. They should get a phone call or a handwritten note from a board member every single time. If you can get your board members to do it for every donor that comes into your organization, more's the better. And especially if you're just getting started, you're in a founding moment in your nonprofit, that is even more important. And your volume of gifts is going to be relatively low compared again to like a major university. So your board should be able to invest in that and handle that. So thank you notes, thank you calls would be the first thing I would say that the board should engage with, because this again is going to cultivate people and make sure that they retain and renew until we can get to the point that we're ready to ask them for a major gift. And the second thing is to open doors to folks in their network. Every single board member, I guarantee, has someone else that they know that could potentially be making a gift to your organization. And it might require some gentle nudging from them, but oftentimes it just requires them opening that door. So what do I mean by that? Opening a door with a prospect can be as simple as an email. And that email might be from board member to potential donor friend and copying the executive director of the organization. And it would say, introduction, you should meet so-and-so executive director's name. Body of the email, dear so-and-so, I know that you and I share a interest in and value of blank, mission of the nonprofit or the values guiding that nonprofit. I thought that you should meet executive director's name, who can tell you all about the great work of nonprofit organization, which I'm on the board of. I have copied him, her on this email, and I hope that you will take the opportunity to get to know each other. Sincerely, board member name, right? There you go. There's the script right there for that board member to open the door to a more substantial relationship between a person that they know might be interested in the organization and the executive director or fundraising staff. So that's how it's done. Getting started in major gifts is as easy as pulling up your database, looking at who's been giving to you for a long time, any amount, who has recently increased their commitment in giving. Yes, if you have fancy free wealth analytics in your database, definitely take a look at those. They can be very helpful. I have utilized those. Does that overlap with any of the folks that are already giving to you in your database? And then how long have they supported you? Have they increased their amount, raised their hand and been like, I am more interested here? And then also cross-referencing that with what you know about that organization and the environment that you're in. If you're a local nonprofit and you work with the Humane Society and this person is also a big donor to an animal advocacy group in your town, okay, there's a match there, right? We know this person's going to be interested in what we're interested in. And then once you have that list, might be 5, might be 10, might be 20 folks, send them an email and say, hey, I'd love to catch up. Would you like to go get coffee? Would you like to hop on a Zoom call? Would you like to have a phone call really quickly? And set some meetings. And at first it might only be like 2 meetings a month or something like that. But work your way up where you're having several conversations a week with donors and or potential donors. And you are utilizing your board to find more folks to reach out to. And this is going to be how you begin to build this program. We need to test that hypothesis and see if they're really interested. And then we have to go through the long and deliberate process of building relationship. You would not, if you went on a first date with a person and they asked you to marry them on the very first date, oh, hi, I just met you. How about a gift of $100,000? That would set you, that would definitely set you on edge and probably make you feel really weird about it. So getting to know their values, what motivates them, why they're interested in your nonprofit's work, and engaging them more and more deeply over time with stories, with site visits, with relationship with you, and hearing you as the fundraiser or executive director talk about the cause. That's the kind of relationship that is going to result in transformational gifts for your nonprofit long term. Okay, we are almost at the top of the hour here. And next week, I'm going to talk a little bit about the H in my Thrive model for diversifying your individual giving program. And the hope-based gifts are the planned gifts. So we're going to talk about legacy gifts, planned gifts, bequest, beneficiary designations, all those things. So if you want to talk about planned giving, I'll be here next Friday at 12:30. Every week for 30 minutes, we have this opportunity here to basically get some free consulting for you. So we're going to just talk about whatever you want to talk about, and then I'll fall back on my topics. So come next week at 12:30. And if you are looking for help getting your major gift program started, or motivating your board to help with fundraising, you can click the link in my bio, and do make sure to follow Real Deal Fundraising if you found any of this helpful here today. So thanks so much, everyone.